Well, if you haven't been paying attention to what goes on in Europe, and look, I'll forgive you if you haven't. There's a lot going on right here outside our own front doors. But religion being obliterated in Germany, among other places, not completely, but close. Let me give you an example. In 1949, 90%, this is after World War II, 90% of the German population were Christians. Today, 13% of the population consider themselves Christians. The belief in God has diminished drastically with a more radically left ideology present. It's not really a shock that when you take away the purpose of life, you also see that reflected in the statistics of having an increase in depression, suicide, loneliness. To make matters worse, anti-Christian hate groups are running rampant in Europe, not just Germany. In just this year alone, there have been 792 anti-Christian hate crimes committed in 34 European countries, and those are just the ones reported. Here now to discuss this is Dr. Jeff Myers. Jeff, nice to see you again.
Good to see you, Steve.
I mean, we see bits and pieces of this, snippets, if you will, of the assaults on, Christian churches and all sorts of places. But, man, this is a much bigger problem, apparently, than even I realized.
It is a big problem because it is the spirit, the evil spirit arising from the witch's brew of postmodernism, racialist resentment, and anti-Western values. That's been taught to our young adults in our education system for many years now. And to no one's surprise, they actually believe it. What happened in Germany is really interesting because when East and West Germany merged, of course, virtually everybody in East Germany was an atheist. They were raised up that way. And people thought, well, Western values will permeate into what used to be East Germany, and it seems to have been the other way around at this point. We should have seen this coming.
So when they tore down the wall, all that socialism and communism, and which is weird. I mean, people used to run through the Brandenburg Gate risking getting shot in the heart just to get out of East Germany. You know that, of course. And Ronald Reagan finally stood there famously and said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. Yeah. And they did, finally, in 1989, right after Reagan left office and George W. Bush, H.W. Bush was in the White House. Why would anybody embrace that? I mean, look, people have been trying to escape communism since communism was created by a coup. It was not a revolution in 1917 with the Bolsheviks. It was a coup. They murdered the royal family and took over and then told people for the next several years, it was an uprising, a revolution. No, it wasn't. It was a coup. Anyhow, ever since that time, people have been fleeing communism from every country it's been instigated in, right?
Until now. The rising generation is more pro-socialist than any previous generation since those walls came down. So what we're seeing right now is the effect of the education system throughout Europe and also in the United States of America. Keep in mind, there are a lot of historical analogies you could use, but a lot of this is the young. For example, right now we're seeing extremely disturbing pro-Hamas rhetoric from young adults. 58% say they recognize that Hamas is a terrorist group that kills women, men, and children, but 51% say that it is justified. This is a generation that didn't know communism, the evils of communism. They did not see the evils of terrorism. And with all of the education they've received and the postmodern idea that you are, whatever you want to be, those are the most easy people in the world to propagandize. Voltaire said, surely if you can make them believe absurdities, you can make them commit atrocities. We're starting to see the tip of the iceberg.
It's bizarre to me that people would trade a walk-on part in the war for a lead role in a cage, to steal a line from Pink Floyd, but that's what it is. People want to be in a cage. You'll own nothing. You'll be happy. You'll make no decisions on your own. You can stare at your smartphone all day long, and you can have drool coming down and dribbling off your chin because you don't have to think about anything. You're fat. You're happy. You're useless. And, by the way, you're expendable in that machine, but people don't seem to understand that part of it, do they?
You've identified something that is not talked about yet, but needs to be talked about. For Mao with the Red Guards rose up. By the way, they were not attacking the capitalists. They were attacking their own teachers. They were attacking Communist Party members, and Mao stood behind them because he could get power out of them. When he no longer felt that they were useful to his power, he had them slaughtered. Adolf Hitler, the Nazi youth rose up. In 1932, they grew from 50,000 members to 2 million. That's That's 1 out of 5 young people in Nazi Germany at that time. And then when they were no longer convenient, he sent them to the front and had them slaughtered. So people in power.
It's the deadliest. It's ultimately tyranny. And the difference between socialism and communism, according to my readings of Ayn Rand, socialism, you vote to be enslaved by vote, communism by force, the difference between suicide and murder. There is no real difference. And you have to understand the great leap forward. Speaking of Mao that you touched on there, Jeff, nobody even talks about this in higher education. The great leap forward, 1959, 60, 61. More than 50 million Chinese paid the price of that great leap forward with their lives. There is more blood in the earth because of communism than all other forms of government combined in world history. That's a fact.
That is a demonstrated fact.
And it's one they should know.
Yeah, there's a demonstrated fact, and people are naive because they haven't seen it personally themselves. Listen, in Europe and in the United States of America, most young people are fairly entitled. More than half are in the middle class or higher. They haven't seen these difficulties personally. They haven't witnessed this oppression personally, and they feel that they can be radical and there won't be any consequences. Christians pay the price for this almost as much as Jews. This is what the report coming out of Europe is telling us at this time.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't get something for nothing. All right. There, I got a Rush quote in, too. I got Ayn Rand, Pink Floyd, and Rush. We did pretty well here, I think.
That's a pretty good day.
All right.
Yeah.
Pretty good lesson. Dr. Jeff Myers, happy Thanksgiving, my friend.
Thanks, you too, Steve.
And keep warning the people. They need to hear it. All right. Still to come, the global digital payment company Visa has been asked by the National Legal and Policy Center to stop endorsing the BLM movement. We'll look at the reasons why with guest Peter Flaherty next on America's Voice Live.